Although I've been out for several years prior to the launch of YouTube, the platform where I really began to discover contemporary Black LGBTQ plus talent and entrepreneurs. I was recently in the UK, and I'm going to borrow a popular British expression. I am gobsmacked to be speaking with one of YouTube's early pioneers, American stand up comedian, writer, screenwriter, film producer, and activist Sampson McCormick. Using his intellect, talents, and humor, Sampson does not shy away from encouraging conversations around gay male sexuality and life as an out Black gay man. Sampson is a naturally funny and insightful comedian who continues to demonstrate how he can hold his own amongst his straight and non Black contemporaries. I look forward to conversing with Mr. McCormick and learning more about his life as a Black gay professional. So, without further ado, hey, Sampson, and welcome.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you inviting me to speak with you on the Black Gay Diaspora podcast. You do great work, and I'm happy to be a part of what you're doing.
Oh, wow. Thank you. I thank you so much for joining me. Yeah. I'm a little nervous, but I'll be a fan just for a second longer and then I'll switch to professional mode. But yeah, I'm just really excited to be talking with you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, how are you?
I'm doing great. Taking one day at a time.
Okay. Now, if I remember correctly, you're from the DC area. Is that where you're based?
I live in LA,
Okay. Okay.
but I'm from DC all day, Southeast to represent. For
Uh-huh.
context, Southeast is it's the hood, but it's no place on earth like Southeast DC. There's so many things about DC that I just have to take a moment and celebrate. Go-go music. I'm not sure if you're familiar with go-go music.
I've heard of it.
It's great music that I'm happy is not mainstream, although I do wish those artists mainstream money because it's genius music. Mumbo sauce is also a staple of DC. It's a sauce. Nobody knows what's in it. I think a little crack is in it, and it's delicious. and of course we have Marion Barry, who is our mayor for life. If you ask anybody about DC politics and you bring up Marion Barry, his legacy for some people is that he was busted for crack cocaine. That's what a lot of people cement his legacy as, but to us, he truly was a man of the people, and he really embodied everything that I wish more of us were in community. He passed in 2014, I believe, but even with him not being physically present on Earth anymore, he's still mayor for life.
Yeah. I actually recently interviewed someone else from DC, Racine Pendarvis.
Yes,
Yeah.
a queen, another
Yes.
legend.
Yes. Yeah, I come from LA. I'm not from LA. I'm from Arizona, but I was living in LA for a long time, so I know the kind of sort of the ins and out of at least navigating life in LA.
I've been in LA for almost 6 years.
How do you like it?
I've learned to enjoy it. I think when you move to a big city like LA, it's about making it for yourself what you need it to be.
Yeah. It's a city where a lot of people come to make it, but I have learned, or I did learn, that you can definitely find your community there. Yeah. As I mentioned, I discovered you more than 10 years ago on your YouTube channel at Sampson McCormick. Um, you were one of the early pioneers, I think, of YouTube or using YouTube as a platform to promote yourself. What prompted that decision?
My best friend, I have a best friend named Wayne. I've been doing comedy. This August will be 22 years that I've been doing comedy. It sometimes scares me how well I can relate to people. And a great reward of that has been that people have supported me in such a tremendous way that I realize it's such a blessing. And Wayne was saying to me one day, I don't know if he's spoken to somebody that was in New York or something. We were in DC, and I don't know if it was he's spoken to somebody who was in New York or Philly or something who were saying that they wanted to have just as much access to the things that I was talking about stuff as the people in DC. And
Mm.
so he said, "Why don't you get on YouTube?" And I was like, "I don't want to get on YouTube." And so he was like, "I think it would really help if you got on YouTube too." connect with our community in a way that allows you to stretch out a bit more. And so I said, all right, whatever. And so I sat down and I remember I made a video called, I made two videos. The first video was about homophobia in this church. It was Greater Mount Calvary in DC, which I used to joke and say was DC's last legendary black gay club. Because it was a church, and I don't just want to label it homophobia. I think we overdo labels on certain behaviors and opinions, but I don't think it was the safest place for black gay men to be who were looking to reconcile their sexuality and what was being taught traditionally in church. It also had the same gay men who would be out on Friday and Saturday night at all the gay clubs in the city. I did a video about Greater Mount Calvary and some of the and their relationship with the black gay community. And then I did another video called Coming Out as a Black Gay Man. And that video got 20,000 views. And I was
Wow, that's
like,
impressive.
I called him. I said, what am I supposed to do with this? And so the true reason why I do what I do is number one, I've always been genuinely funny. I don't, I say that humbly. That's a talent that I've been blessed with. And also it's been a great way to connect with community, right? And so I started getting these letters from black gay men, white gay men were watching, and a lot of people's parents and things like that. And I remember recording those videos on the windowsill of the room that I was staying in at the time. My sister and I had a house together, apartment together. And I used to set this is before camera phones became a thing. I had a little camera that you had to put batteries in. And midway through the videos I would record, the batteries would run out because they weren't strong enough for the camera. So I had to take them out, go to the store, get fresh batteries, come back and record the video all over again. And then you had to wait a half hour for a 10-minute video to upload to YouTube. I remember sitting, recording those videos on the windowsill. And at the time, I was dealing very heavily with, because I grew up in church, I was dealing very heavily with religion and my sexuality. And so that was my way to communicate. I had no idea who I was communicating with, right? But the people who were reaching back out to me let me know that I had community as well, and that I was normal. So it was a two-way thing.
Mhm. Yeah, for me, discovering you, I had already been out for a few years, but I was at that point of awareness because it wasn't planned, but I had just because it was a available apartment, I had moved to West Hollywood, and it was around the time I came out in the late '90s, and part of it was okay, but being black, I was like, I want to know where more of us are, and I did find that out through friends, going to the Catch and a few other places. It was when I discovered your platform, but I was hearing the internal dialogue that some of the questions that I had about myself and my own experiences, specifically as a black gay man. So for me, it was like, finding water in the desert. And then, of course, your humor is something that really pulls people in. And so I just ate it up. And I'll say that one of my favorite episodes of yours was when you interviewed your mother, because to
Mm,
me that was definitely a beautiful episode, and it was also to me because I never had that. My mom knew I was out or gay, but we never had those types of conversations. So for both you and your mother, I thought that was a very brave and beautiful thing to not only do but also to release to the public.
yeah, yeah. Our relationship is far from perfect, but I will say that in that aspect of being able to, I didn't get thrown thrown out on the street when she found out. That is a blessing. I've always known that I like guys, but I was trying to date girls. And so I remember this girl, she was crazy about me, and I thought she was crazy. I was like, I mean, she was just like, oh my God, I want to have your baby. And I mean, I was like, you talking Chinese to me now. I don't understand nothing you saying. And so we would go on dates and things, but I never tried to make any moves on her. And so after about 6 months of this, she calls me late one night. She says, "Okay, I got a question for you." And I'm like, "All right, what's up?" She was like, "I noticed you show me no attention. Like all the other boys that I go out with, they be trying to do this and that, but you don't. So I got a question." And I'm like, "Okay." She was like, "Do you like hot, sweaty men or hot, sweaty women?" And I was like, "Oh,
Wow. Okay.
hot, sweaty men, please, for 500." And and she called my mom and told my mom.
What was that like for you?
Terrifying because I didn't grow up in the house where I could make mistakes. I didn't grow up in a house where I could express myself authentically. So, anything that went contrary to being perfect, I thought was the end of the world. And so I knew gay was far from perfect. And when I got the call from my mom telling me come home immediately, I just knew it was the end of the world. So that was terrifying that it needed to happen.
How did you, because you talk about growing up in the church, how was that for you? Because, and you kind of, I think, mentioned too that some people stay in that place of not really reconciling their spirituality with who they are as specifically gay men. How did you start that process of acceptance despite that?
It was a very painful process to recognize that in order to truly be who I needed to be, I needed to find a way to reconcile faith and who I've always been. And so for me, it was painful because it involved wrestling with the thought of going to hell. And so that kept me up many nights. And I was 21 or 22 when I really first started dealing with that. And I remember I would be laying in bed late at night and I could see pages of the Bible in my head burning. I could see them burning. And I could hear all these, what they call clobber passages in my head. I think any gay man who's been to church knows what those are. And so I had to really wrestle with that. And it got to a point where I really just had to not be afraid of hell. And I said, nothing like that could be worse than living in fear of just simply being who I am. And when I started to walk authentically, I started to meet people and have experiences that affirm that. So I would meet ministers who at the time were not openly affirming queer people in their congregations, but who said, "I know that to preach a sermon that's damning people to hell is not right." I would meet people's parents and stuff and, people out in the community. And it was just so much love. And I said, okay, if these human beings that I'm meeting can show me so much love for being who I am, why can't God?
I have to let that one sit for a second. Yeah, I didn't grow up, necessarily with consistent religion, but I know the residue of that. Yeah.
Hmm. A lot of people, they don't understand that doesn't just affect, self-image. That also affects how comfortable you're willing to be intimately with another man. Thoughts about having sex with another man. Thoughts about your body. Thoughts about even lust, like to look at another man and go, "Wow, he's beautiful." And so it's a lot deeper than just, "Oh, I shouldn't be gay." It's like all this internalized shame that you have to work through. And I really do believe for many of us, I think you have to kind of do it every day.
I have to be okay to say, when I look at that particular one, what do I find attractive about him? And that is okay.
Yeah, and for me, my thing is, I really like to spoil my men, so when I'm, spoiling up on whoever, of course, I've had to work through that, like, because you hear all these things, especially growing up, why you treating this dude like a girl, all the stuff you hear, you just have to work through that and go, it's okay for me to show love. I mean, if we can, it's crazy that we live in a society that celebrates us killing each other, but not us loving each other in whatever capacity that is.
Well, I know you've talked about it a couple times that I've seen about just yeah, there's us specifically as gay men and intimacy, but just with black men in general and intimacy and this fear of it, and it's like there's nothing wrong with it. Women are encouraged to express intimacy in ways that are non-sexual. Why can't we do that for ourselves, either within a relationship or just as friends?
If you look at straight men, there are a lot of straight men who never go home to their wives. They always with their homies. They eat with their homies. They cry with their homies. They get mad when their homies spending time with their girlfriends, and that's a relationship. They just go home to eat, and they might have sex with their girlfriend. We don't like to talk about it, but sometimes they be having sex with their homies too. But those are the more complicated parts of human behavior and sexuality that we're still evolving as a society to be able to look at as simply human nature and not feel that they are too taboo to talk about.
You mentioned earlier about your gift for comedy, and I remember an episode, or you were interviewed, this show called "In My House" or "In the House,"
The
and
house, yes.
the house, yeah. And I remember, I think it was a question that was posed to you about that, like, is it something you could learn or is it a gift? Um, but like, when did you discover your gift for comedy?
When I was in preschool, I remember I used to preach these sermons because I grew up in church. So that was the first thing that I saw that was interesting. And I would preach these sermons about cartoon characters, and I remember the daycare counselors, they were tickled by that. But the two fondest memories that I have of three really fondest memories that I have of humor were one, I used to get put out of class all the time when I was growing up. Always very intelligent, but because I've always kind of been an out of the box learner, a lot of the teachers didn't recognize that. So what they called me, what was back then they called it retarded.
Mm.
They use that word, retarded, special ed. They used to put me in those classes, where you sat in a room and I'm grateful that I had a strong enough mind not to believe that. And I met a teacher, my second grade teacher, Miss Diane Walters, was the one who said to me, she said, "You're really smart, but you just need a little bit more structure." And so she said, "How about this? How about if you do your work, then every Wednesday you can stand up in front of the class and do whatever you want." And I
Wow.
said, "Okay." And my grades went from D's and E's to all A's and I think like a B or something like that. Also, I remember I was in the hallway once. I was probably in what, fourth grade, third grade, fourth grade. And we used to have those scholastic book fairs. You remember the scholastic book fairs when we were growing up? We were coming out of one of those. It was like some sixth graders or something. I had them in the hallway cracking up. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, I can make people laugh. When I was in fifth grade, I had two teachers, Miss Mumford, Mr. Mumford, and Miss Lynn. They used to join our classes together for, I forget what it was, but you remember those rolling TVs that we used to get excited about when they used to come into class?
Yes, I do.
One of those was late because one of the other teachers had borrowed it. They would wait for the TV to come in and they said, "Well, Sampson, you can get up in front of the class and tell some jokes." I really sometimes have to tell myself it's okay to be that blessed with such a strong talent.
Well, you had a lot of angels, it sounds like, around you that saw that too.
Yeah, I am highly creative. I can turn anything into comedy. I'm a great storyteller and I have a great mind for like taking things and I can like, because I grew up really poor. So I think this is where I get this from is very resourceful. I can look at any obstacle and I can like rearrange it and create really good results. And so, for a lot of the challenges that I've had in my life, that along with being able to maintain a great sense of humor has allowed me to remain positive and overcome a lot of really challenging things.
Thank you for sharing what you shared so far. Because again, I just know you from what, seeing you on YouTube and seeing some of your other projects. It's that thing of you can't know a person until you hear their story. And I'd be like, oh, that guy's always been confident. He's always been, on point and everything. And not that you hadn't been in certain aspects, but, sharing about, some of the internal dialogue that you had to fight against. It's like a reminder that, that you're, I don't know if warrior is the right word, but that you've challenged yourself and overcome a lot.
I think both. And I think we all are warriors in different ways. It's like be kind because we're all fighting a battle. I definitely will say that I've been confident enough to survive in many ways. And then when it got past surviving, I had to learn how to become more confident in order to become better. And so from here,
Mm,
it's just, becoming better and better. And so that means becoming a better man. That means serving our community in a more effective way. I don't think I've ever used my talent just for self gratification, but I think I have also had to learn how to use it to just be a more effective human being. And then also, when I talk about facing challenges, in this business that we're in, definitely does have room to provide more opportunities for Black men, Black people, Black queer people, because I realized if I would have come from a more supportive environment, and if I would have had more people around me who just saw what I've been doing and would have helped me, it would have made all of this a lot easier.
like you said, you've been in comedy for over 20 years, being out and as a Black gay man, but standing your ground. And, now we have more known out Black gay comics. It's like, you paved the road for that to be possible. But how was it for you when you decided to pursue this profession to be honest about that part of yourself on a public platform or on a stage?
For the first 2 years, I was just goofy. I was just on stage talking about smoking weed, selling weed. I think I did used to have a couple of baby mama jokes and stuff because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. Well, for one, I remember there used to be a club a coffee house that I used to do every Monday in DC called Soho Cafe. It was in DuPont Circle, and it was right across the street from the fireplace, and it was a couple doors down from this old legendary gay bar called Mr. P's. I remember I would sneak in with my hoodie on
Hmm.
and sit in the back until they would call me up on stage, and then I would get on stage and I would tell my jokes, and I was scared that some of the gay men would come in, and they would come in because on the way out the club they would come in and use the bathroom, and they, hey, what he in the club last week? And I was just like, oh shit. So, so I said, okay, well, I don't want to be, hiding from folks. I just never wanted to have to deal with being accused of being somebody who I was not. And so I just started talking about it on stage. At the time, as you just said, there was me and Andre Kelly. I was in DC. He was out here on the West Coast. And so in a way that made it a little bit more fun, because you had to represent for the gays when you was up there. That challenged me to always be the funniest one on the show. That challenged me to represent in a really strong way. There were so many club owners and bookers who didn't think an audience wanted to see somebody who was gay, and I wasn't being booked in the white gay spaces. It really just came down to being so funny that they had to see me.
Yeah, because your humor is universal, and especially around specifics around being Black. in the church, and just being in a black home. It's universal, so they, of course, they can relate to it.
As I get older, my comedy is just getting, it's always been strong, but it's getting stronger in a way where I can really go wherever I want to go. And, even in the social climate that we're in now, I can talk about things that a lot of other people, not just comedians, but people are afraid to talk about. If they come to a show, they're gonna fall in love because it's impossible to not love me is number one. And then number two, um, like you said, humor is universal. And I believe that if you have the right intentions and if you have a firm grasp on what it is that you're trying to say and how you deliver it, it might ruffle some feathers, but you'll have the right outcome. But up until the pandemic, I was performing in places like Billings, Montana, and Des Moines, Iowa, and Bradenton, Florida, and these different little towns in Texas, and places where my black gay ass shouldn't have been at, especially alone, driving at night, doing shows, getting out at 10 p.m. What kept me safe, I believe, was I was able to make people laugh. We saw each other's humanity. And I'm in a big discussion with parts of the gender non-binary and some of the trans community about it now, is allowing people to be themselves. It's important that we see each other and allow each other to be each other and find ways that we can still connect regardless.
Mm, mm, I like that. Yeah. I knew of you first of all as a comedian, but you've also grown and expanded professionally as an actor, as a director, as a writer, and as a producer. Was that part of your original plan when you decided to get into the world of entertainment?
Nope. No. I wanted to do comedy and I wanted to do like some sitcoms and things like that, but I was having such a hard time breaking into television. You have to have that in order to like get booked more so you can have bigger audiences. Looking at it on paper, there's no reason why, I shouldn't have been able to get picked up by some agency or whatever. But I think I just ended up being called to something a lot bigger than that, which is, again, it's been very challenging, but I've become a better person because of it. Not just for myself, but creating a space in this business for our stories to be able to exist. I believe we should have people in these spaces like media and, politics, activism, the church, these sectors of industry and community that do influence people on a large scale. I think you need people in those places that you can really trust. I believe that we as black people, and then we as black queer people, we contribute so much in so many ways to culture overall that we should see things that we are, proud of. And so that's what I contribute to.
I saw this years ago, the first time I left the US to travel, that Black, specifically, not to negate other Black cultures throughout the world, but Black American culture, it's universal, it's everywhere. Like you said, it influences the languages, be it in Italian and Swedish. People are saying these expressions. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh shit. And to your point, yeah, but we need to see ourselves there too. And I know for me, definitely, as I become more focused in this particular platform, I'm one of these people. I want, like what you're doing, I want to see more of our stories. I'm on Netflix and these streaming platforms, and I look for gay content. I'm like, nope, 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 because I want to see us.
And not just gay content, but black gay content, content, of course, content for trans people who are of color and non-binary, and not sob stories, but like really really expansive stories that make us laugh, that scare us, that and not scary as in some of the shit we've had to overcome. I'm talking about scary as in just like, whoa, that was twisted. That was, I love horror, so some good uh, horror films, comedies, even theater. I miss plays. You don't see a lot of plays happening, but even you go to a theater and see a play. I mean, it's those are the things I'm really passionate about. I think my journey has been a bit more challenging because it has allowed me to see parts of being a creator, being a Black gay person who's doing this independently, and so many other things that will allow me to again be very effective for other people who need somebody to kind of put them at the table, open the door for them, give them opportunities.
I hear and what I feel is that you're building a community. We do have these, gay communities like Castro, all that stuff. It's never felt home for me.
Yeah,
I do like that social media, specifically with us in the Black queer community, it's I think for me at least, it's helping me to find community, and just hearing what you shared is an example of, yeah, I want to make sure that I'm fed, but I also want to make sure that other people are fed too. I think as Black people, and it's global, I'm finding out that resisting that crab in a barrel mentality, like I can be, I'm the only one that can be at the top of this heap. It's like, no, we could all be here.
yeah, I had to learn that because I'm to a degree it comes from a place of insecurity. I have been out for years, and I mean it's getting standing ovations every night from in places I know my Black ass shouldn't have been at. I can go to Billings, Montana, and I can make 120 white people who probably see two Black people a year stand up and clap in a theater at a casino. And I'm like, I'm really good at this, and not just funny, but I have a way of really connecting with the world in a very valuable and important way. And so for me, I just always thought, I said, okay, well, I have this thing, so why aren't these doors opening for me so that I can be more expansive? Because I saw a lot of other people get things that I have been working for so long, and that's a blow to your ego, you know. Not that I don't think I've necessarily intentionally operated from that space, but that really hurt. And but it made me better, and it made me be able to start going, you know what? I was able to start sitting back and see stuff they were doing and go, you know what? That's good for him. And then I started going after their shows, and they had known me, and a few of them have said, they started because they saw me doing it, and it helped me to get over that, be able to really be able to celebrate other Black gay, particularly comedians.
Remember years ago, so I moved to LA to be an actor, and I fell out very quickly because I was so focused on other people's stuff that I got into a negative space. But you sounds like you got to the other side of that.
I really, really love comedy. I absolutely love comedy, and my intention in this business has never been anything other than just to bring joy and light and positivity to the world. Be great at what I do, and so it wasn't. I didn't get in. I mean, of course, I want money and material things, more money and material things, but I think I've always been in it with the right intentions and in places that I need to grow. Like you said, I had to do that. It just takes a lot of it takes a lot of courage.
Okay. You touched on, theater, and know you were in as an actor. You performed in B Boy Blues. Was it 2013 or so?
Yes,
And then fast forward a few years later, you executive produced the film adaptation of that story, James L. Hardy's novel from 1994. What was that like for you, from starting with being on stage in front of people to, being one of the people behind the scenes to making it happen on the big screen?
a learning experience, and it was a learning experience. Because I'm growing in and being able to, because not just produce films, but also make sure that even in these independent projects, the actors make money for as long as, I can make sure I'm able to put money in their pockets after the project is done. So that means when the project is done, making sure they can still get royalty payments a year or two after, or that it's so successful that I can pay them for life. I think, and I'm gonna get back to your question in a second. I think to really get to that place, for us as Black gay filmmakers and entertainment entrepreneurs, there are going to need to be some huge breakthroughs, in Hollywood, at the box office, not on Amazon Prime and stuff where I'm at now. I'm talking at the box office, and that's going to happen. I'm going to make that happen. I think the industry needs to see that there are some Black gay projects that can go to the box office and sweep. The journey from B-boy blues to the stage to the film was a learning experience for me. It was worth it, number one, to come away from it again with lessons on how to show up for other people better. How to make sure everybody's talents are recognized on a project. That's important. And most of all, that Black gay boys coming up now have a project to look at that we didn't have when we were coming up. That's most important.
And you got a project off the ground that is it's a classic. I remember when I read that book. I read it before I came out. It's secret, similar to like a James Baldwin piece. It was one of those stories for me that I was like, this, when is this going to be a movie?
Yeah, and
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 it happened.
and James Earl Hardy had been working on that for 20 years. We were doing a show at the Ira Aldridge Theater in DC, because the play had been on Broadway, but we were in DC. And I remember telling him backstage, I said, "We're going to make this a movie." And so, close to 10 years later, we did it. It's a very important piece to have recorded for us to go back and look at.
Speaking of projects or films, do you have any ones that you can share that are in the works? Or I'm assuming you're always doing something.
So I just got finished directing a film by Donnie Hugh Frazier, uh, called Ruse Blues. Donnie was in two of my other films that I wrote and produced, called Love the One You're With, which is also on Amazon Prime, and another film that I did called Party and Play, which is also on Amazon Prime. So Donnie is in those two, and then he hit me up and he said, "I want to write my own film, and I want you to help me with it." And so he wrote it, and I said, "Okay, well, I'll direct it." And so we put that out, and it just went to the Pan African Film Festival here in LA, and which is a huge deal. It is an Oscar qualifying film festival, and the film was nominated for Best Narrative Feature for a Black gay film to be in a Pan African Film Festival. That's huge. Again, some of these larger Black film festivals, they sometimes they forget to include us for whatever reason, but thankfully the Pan African Film Festival does a good job of making sure that we're there and we're represented.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And yeah, and so I did those. Of course, Love the One You With, Party and Play. Party and Play was number 13 on LGBTQ films list in the UK,
Hmm.
which is huge for a film that had a $10,000 budget and
Wow.
independently done, to be 13 in another country that I'd never been to before. I think it was one of the biggest uh, Black gay films of 2021 when it came out. A lot of people did talk shit about it, and it helped me
Okay.
to recognize how important it is to believe in what you're doing, and kind of filter out those negative voices that are going to be there.
I don't want to forget this. Winding down, this is one of my favorite things that you've done recently. A series I think you started last year, Profiles on Black Gay Love.
Mm,
Love that. I love
thank
it. I
you.
love it. I love it.
Thank
Can
you.
you share with us about that?
Man, so Profiles on Black Gay Love is such a gift. It's such a gift because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I really enjoy helping people or being a vehicle for people to tell stories. Is right in line with the filmmaking and things like that. And so I was sitting in here and I said, I want to talk to Black gay men, but what do I want to talk to them about? And so I said, their relationships. I started reaching out to couples that I knew. It is such a blessing. And it really is a gift because, and I think it's been very affirming for a lot of our men. It has even allowed other people who aren't gay to be able to recognize how valuable love is to us. So it's again, it's been such a gift. It's such a gift.
All of them are great, but one of the ones, because I don't think we see enough of that in general within the queer community, but specifically in the Black queer community, the elderly couple.
Hmm.
And that one, oh, that was like that was just such a beautiful story that they shared with you. And I think it's an archive. What you've created is an archive, not just for us, but for future generations to see that this does exist. It can exist, and because I know you've talked about it, but we all talk about it in our circles about not negating interracial relationships. But my first choice is a black gay relationship, and I want to see that more. I want to see that in media, and you've done it.
I think it's important to see that not that anything is wrong with interracial relationships, but I think that gay mainstream media kind of pushes that. When we're talking about Black people's involvement in the mainstream gay community, it usually is from the lens of what we look like with a white partner. Again, there's nothing wrong with that, but in our communities where we see each other and we're with each other and we're more likely to be with a partner who looks like us, I think it's important for us to understand what that looks like. What some of the challenges that we face as Black gay men who connect with each other and have had to overcome different, you know, I don't like to use the word trauma, but different life experiences and things like that, and what that means to navigate those and come together and be together and create something that's beautiful and strong in a world, even in a community that tells us that's not possible. It's less about us being capable of it and more about the fact that there are a lot of Black gay men who feel they are unworthy of love. When you see couples who have been together 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they say, yeah, we had to overcome that, but this is how we did it. It kind of serves as a resource guide for those of us who are working towards that and who want to build together.
I look at some of the couples and I'm like, God, okay, fax that one up to God, fax that one up to God.
And that's good. That's good. I
Yeah.
mean, the whole idea of representation in media is so that you can see somebody who looks like you doing things that you want to do, and now you have an image of it in your head, and you know you can do it.
Art, as you're creative, you're an artist, you're in media, and art informs us not only about the past and helps the future generations see what was there before them, but it helps those of us in the present. And it was just very recently I was talking to a black friend in LA and then a friend in England, and the question came up of why can't we find black love, or is it harder for us? I don't agree with that. I mean, I know there's challenges. I don't want to, or me personally, I don't want to believe it's not possible, but I think I can believe it's more possible in seeing images that you're projecting and promoting with your platform. So yeah, I thank you for that so very much.
And
Yeah,
again, I
and
thank you for what you're doing here because I mean this is important too. Especially to call it the Black gay diaspora. podcast. I mean, that's so loaded, and this is important.
I see now why, quote unquote white people feel proud of themselves, because they see themselves, projected. They see themselves promoted.
And not just projected, but when you look at white people, they see themselves projected as kings and queens and gods and lords, and you know, as opposed to what we get seen at
Oh God.
traditionally as black people. You look at us. Every now and then you might see a painting of us up in the juke joint or something like that. Which speaks of our style or
Yeah.
our rhythm of our blues. Very rarely do you see pictures of black God, black kings, or if we see it, we have become so accustomed to seeing white people with them crowns on that when we see a black person with it, we automatically pick apart why they don't deserve to have that crown on their head. Slavery, of course, was trauma. Now that's trauma. That is traumatic. And a lot of our parents raise us through a lens of fear. And when you're raising a child through a lens of fear, it's because you want them to survive. But a lot of times that's the very thing keeping them from really living.
We still haven't really addressed that racist or that part of history. It was trauma, but our daily experiences, we're still filtering out trauma or finding ways to filter out trauma. And specifically to your point of children and how we raise our kids, when we go out in public, don't make me look bad, make sure you don't get messy, to make sure you don't get dirty, don't be too loud. And like you said, other groups or kids are running around all over the
They can
place.
do whatever they want, and they grow up with that sense of confidence that they can go into a space and they have a right to be there.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just want to thank you so much. Again, this is one of these, and I really mean this, these interviews, I had no concept of what this was when it came to be 2 years ago, but, meeting and interviewing someone and like, this is like a true, like, wow moment for me. So I'm just really thankful and grateful that you came onto this platform.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any final thoughts or insights?
Just be good to yourself. Take your time. Enjoy life as much as you can, and just do your best to believe in the best.
And where can we engage with you online?
Instagram at Sampson McCormick, SampsonMcCormick. Also Twitter at Official Sampson. YouTube, great content is on YouTube. Great content is on Amazon Prime, the films that are there. SampsonComedy.com. I'm always touring. Knock on wood, I'm always booked to perform at some great places. So, you never know where I may be coming. So just stay tuned and make sure you get a ticket, because most of the times the shows do sell out.
Thank you for spending time with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends too. You can also follow us on Instagram at Our Black Gay Diaspora and on Twitter at BLK Gay Diaspora. Until next time.